All right, from the state, please.
Thank you, Judge. Could you please state your name for the record?
Jimmy Turpin.
And Mr. Turpin, what do you do for a living?
I'm a captain investigator with the Harris County District Attorney's Office. As captain, I oversee the investigators that are assigned to the Special Crimes Bureau. There are several different divisions within the Bureau. There's narcotics, there's money laundering, asset forfeiture, vehicular crimes, major offenders division is one of those. Sex crimes is another. So any investigator that's assigned to those divisions within our Bureau, I am their supervisor.
So is it fair to say you oversee quite a few divisions that are involved in quite a few different things within the District Attorney's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that you mentioned is that you're captain over the Major Offenders Division. Do you have investigators that answer to you that work in the Major Offenders Division?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to talk specific to this case.
Okay.
So in this particular case, who were the investigators that were involved that you supervised?
Primarily it was Lieutenant Mike Malden. I do believe that Investigator Brian Powell assisted in some degree, and myself.
And you mentioned Mike Malden, and is Mike a lieutenant for you?
That is correct.
So let's talk now about how you became involved in this particular investigation.
Okay.
Tell me how you first became aware that there was something going on.
On February 23rd, 2017, it was after hours, probably almost 7 p.m., 6:50, 7 p.m., I received a phone call from my chief asking me to contact the chief of...
Without saying what was said, did you receive a call from your chief?
Yes.
And within the district attorney's office, are there actually people that are higher than you are?
Yes.
Okay, considered your supervisors?
Yes.
And after you received the call from your supervisor, without saying what was said, what did you do next?
When I received a phone call, I then contacted the intake division and spoke with a person by the name of John Denholm, who is our intake chief.
Okay. Backing up a little bit, what is intake?
Intake is where charges are filed. Officers will come and file charges on people who are arrested, or they either have a warrant that they need to execute. They will come to intake to either file the charges or process the paperwork.
And prior to Hurricane Harvey, was the intake division of the Harris County District Attorney's Office actually located in the same building as the Harris County District Attorney's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the building that we see out the windows over there, 1201 Franklin?
That's correct.
Okay. So when you say that you went and talked to John Denholm with the intake division, that would have been contained within the District Attorney's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
And without saying what you talked with John Denholm about, tell us, who is John Denholm?
John Denholm is the chief, or was the chief, of the intake division for the Harris County District Attorney's Office.
Now, when you say chief, that's a different term than captain or lieutenant. So is he an investigator or is he a prosecutor?
He's a prosecutor.
So after talking with him, what do you do next?
I then contact a person by the name of Michael Kubosh.
And without saying what was said, do you have a conversation with Michael Kubosh?
Yes.
Do you recall what day that was?
February 23rd, 2017.
This is all occurring within the same day?
Within hours.
Okay. And this is all after about 5 p.m. that afternoon?
After 5 p.m., yes.
After you talk with Michael Kubosh, what is your next step?
I then contacted the Houston Police Department and spoke with a Officer Sharp in the Homicide Division of Houston Police Department.
And after you spoke with Officer Sharp, did someone reach out to you?
Yes.
From the Houston Police Department?
Yes.
Who was that?
Officer Sharp.
Okay. And after you talked with Sharp, who did you speak with?
Michael Kubosh.
Okay. And then what did you do next?
I contacted Lieutenant, after I received the information about the matter, I contacted Lieutenant Malden and advised him of the situation, what was going on, and asked him if he would be the case agent from the DA's perspective on this particular case.
How does that work? So we have a major offenders division with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and then there's the major offenders division with the Houston Police Department. And we've heard a little bit about how they work in conjunction with each other, but as someone who handles that relationship, talk to us about it.
Well, I have a unique perspective because I've worked both. So the Houston Police Department Major Offenders Division conducts proactive and reactive investigations similar to the Major Offenders Division within the Harris County DA's office. But they are an agency unto themselves, a police department, where we are basically a law firm that has, for the state, that has investigators who are policemen attached to them. So the Major Offenders Division within the DA's office also investigates reactive investigations, homicides, capital murder cases, any occult.
An aberration and asked that it be question and answer.
That's sustained.
So do you work then often on proactive investigations independent of the Houston Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
And then is it also common for you to work at proactive investigations with the Houston Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know an individual by the name of Sergeant Quinn?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know Sergeant Quinn?
I've known him for years. I worked for him when I was with the Houston Police Department.
And at the time that this case occurred, what was his position within the Houston Police Department?
He was the sergeant over a career criminal squad within the Major Offenders Division of the Houston Police Department.
So did you, without saying what was said, did you make contact with him?
I have spoken with him. I also instructed Lieutenant Malden to make contact with him.
Okay. During this time period, were you going to be out of the office?
Yes, ma'am. That's primarily why I asked Lieutenant Malden to contact Sergeant Quinn.
Non-responsive, Your Honor, to the question asked.
Why did you ask Investigator Malden to be involved?
Because I was going to be out of town.
During the investigation that you're conducting, do you become aware of an individual by the name of Leon Jacob?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you do some research on the defendant, Leon Jacob?
Yes, ma'am.
Through your research, did you learn that he had pending cases filed with the Harris County District Attorney's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this a certified copy of the information that was filed in the assault family member case?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it entitled The State of Texas versus Leon Philip Jacob?
Yes, ma'am.
And from reading the information, are you able to determine who the complainant was alleged in that information?
Let me see here. Megan Louise Veracas.
Okay. And now showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 16, a certified copy of the a 2-year protective order. Were you familiar with that document?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And who is the protected individual in this document?
Megan Veracas.
And then showing you State's Exhibit number 17, which is a certified copy of a stalking indictment. Tell us who the defendant is on that case.
Let me find it on here. Oh, I'm sorry. The defendant, yes,
Yes.
Leon Philip Jacob.
Okay, and then the complainant in that case as well.
Megan Veracas.
All right, Captain Turpin, so at this point in your investigation, do you leave town for a few days?
Yes.
And do you leave Lieutenant Malden to continue the investigation from the Harris County District Attorney's Office standpoint?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point, do you return from out of town?
Yes.
And then do you re-engage in this investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the next step in your investigation?
While I was off, Lieutenant Malden continued the investigation and began looking for an individual by the name of Zach.
Okay. Without saying what was said, did you become aware that Zach was actually located?
Yes.
And did you become aware about what had occurred at an Olive Garden
Yes.
and what had transpired among some phone calls between an undercover officer with the Houston Police Department and the defendant, Leon Jacob?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you become aware of a plan to go to the Willowick condo late into the night of March the 8th, 9th time period, 2017?
Your Honor, object as to the form of the question being asked. It's testimony coming from the district attorney's office as opposed to coming from the witness stand.
I'll rephrase, Judge.
You may rephrase.
Did you participate in an investigation at the Willowick condo back in March of 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically in the early morning hours of March the 9th going into the 10th?
Yes, early morning, from late March 9th into the early morning hours of the 10th, yes.
What was your role there?
I was there to facilitate any issues that may occur on scene between the Houston Police Department and our office, if there was any to arise during the investigation.
Did any?
No.
Did you become aware that at some point in those early morning hours that the defendant, Leon Jacob, was arrested?
Yes, ma'am.
And that Valerie McDaniel was arrested?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you then go to the Houston Police Department property room?
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you meet when you got to the property room?
I met with, several officers were there, primarily the major offenders, officers that were involved in this investigation, but Montrose Cisneros was probably who you're referring to.
It is. So did you meet with Officer Cisneros?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he give you anything?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he give you?
He gave me phones and computers and iPad that had been recovered from the Willowick location.
And what did you do with those items?
I marked and tagged those into the Harris County DA's property room.
And did that end your involvement with this investigation as far as the proactive investigation and then recovering evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I pass the witness.
Yes, ma'am, approach, Your Honor. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Exhibits 15, 16, and 17. And Exhibit 15 is a copy of a complaint, is it not, or a misdemeanor complaint?
That's correct.
All right, sir. And Exhibit 16, pardon me.
I'm sorry, yes. Okay.
Exhibit 16 is a protective order, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And there's an attorney by the name of Stacy Bond who was representing Mr. Jacob, correct?
On the paper, yes, sir. That's
All
what
right.
it says.
My name doesn't appear anywhere here, correct?
Not that I've seen, no.
All right. Nor does my co-counsel,
Well, I don't know
Mr.
your
Papasil.
No.
All right. Now, I notice on exhibit number 16, there is a paragraph beginning with, and it's the third paragraph down,
Yes, sir.
beginning with the court, correct?
That's correct.
And let me see if I can put that up on a,
On the projector?
yeah.
Beginning with the court,
Go ahead. Yes, beginning with.
the court finds that the applicant and respondent are members of the same family or household, or were previously involved in a dating relationship. For the limited purpose of enforcing this order, and then it's scratched out.
All right, what is scratched out?
The court finds that family violence has occurred and that family violence is likely to occur again in the future, and that the respondent, Leon Jacob, has committed family violence. The
All
court,
right, let me stop you right there. So that particular portion that indicates that Leon Jacobs has committed family violence and is likely to commit family violence in the future, and the court finds that family violence has occurred, that's been scratched out,
yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And would that indicate to you that the court did not find evidence to support those particular sentences in that paragraph?
I would not want to testify as to why they scratched that out.
All right. But somebody obviously scratched them out.
That's correct. It appears.
And is it fair to assume that those did not pertain to Leon Jacob, if they're scratched out?
I'm going to object that call for speculation. This witness has already stated he doesn't know why they were scratched out.
Calls for legal conclusion, sustained.
Who would have had access to this particular document to scratch it out?
I would assume the prosecutor of the court at this time, or are the attorneys.
All right. There's nothing on here to suggest that I participated in this proceeding, correct?
No, sir.
Nor my co-counsel?
No, sir.
All right. As a matter of fact, there's no lawyer attached to this particular document.
Just the name Stacy Bond.
Stacy Bond, correct. All right. But is it fair, I may have just asked this, but is it fair to assume that scratching it out, somebody inferred or at least directly made a determination that that particular scratched out document or sentence was inapplicable in this proceeding to Leon Jacob?
Judge, I'm going to object. This calls for a legal conclusion and speculation on the part of this witness.
Sustained.
Let's go down to the next sentence, officer. The court finds the following protective orders are, and would you read that for us?
For the safety and welfare and in the best interest of the applicant, and are necessary for the prevention of family violence.
Now, they're scratched out portions of that particular sentence, correct?
Yes.
And would you read the scratched out portions for the ladies and gentlemen of this jury?
For the safety and welfare, and are necessary for the protection of family violence, or excuse me, prevention of family violence.
So again, the same question. There is somebody in authority, we don't know if it's a prosecutor, a court clerk, that has scratched that portion out of the protective order, and it would be inferred that it didn't pertain to Leon Jacob. Would that be fair?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion and speculation on the part of this witness.
I sustain it. I don't think we've heard that he's an attorney.
He's not.
I sustain it.
All right, I'm going to show you what's on page 4 of that particular document. That bears a few signatures, does it not?
Yes, it does.
All right. One signature on the lower right-hand side is for Stacy Bond with her address. She's the defense lawyer, correct?
That's correct.
And on the left-hand side is a signature for an assistant district attorney, prosecuting attorney for Harris County. Who would that have been?
The name is Beth Barron.
All right. Now, in your familiarity with courts and the system and things of that fashion, is it a fair assessment, sir, that these signatures, both of Stacy Bond and an assistant district attorney, were signed on this document after those items referred to in the previous couple of questions have been scratched out?
That would be the norm.
That would be the normal thing to do.
Yes, I would not sign a document prior to something. I would not believe that anyone would sign a document prior to knowing its contents.
And also, if somebody scratched out a portion of a document that had already been signed, that could be tantamount to a criminal act, could it not?
If you altered a document after a signature, yes.
Okay. Now, you testified in the bond hearing, did you not?
Yes, sir.
And I was the attorney asking questions of you.
You were.
There were no custodial statements made by Mr. Jacob. correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And are you aware that he was surprised and shocked at the time he was arrested?
I'm sure he was.
Okay. Anybody would be, correct?
I would imagine.
Unless they expected to be arrested.
I'm not going to suggest what he thought. I would be surprised.
Okay. Was there any conversation with Mr. Kubash?
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir. Did you have any conversation with Michael Kubash?
I did.
And was there discussion about, in that conversation about going to Pittsburgh?
Objection, this calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Were you privy, or did you suggest, or did you in any way incorporate into your conversation with Michael Kubash this whole concept about going to Pittsburgh in any way?
And Judge, I'm going to object, this calls for hearsay.
Well, I'm asking about what he did.
So,
No.
Did not.
Not with Mr. Kubash, no.
All right, who with?
The HPD officer, Sharp.
All right. And was that information that you provided or he provided to you?
He provided me.
That there was information collected during this investigation that would underscore the idea of going to Pittsburgh, that is making going to Pittsburgh, correct?
I'm going to object to the form of the question.
I didn't understand it quite. Would you rephrase, please?
Yes, Your Honor. The conversation about Pittsburgh, did that conversation was originated by whom, sir?
Officer Sharp.
All right. And did Officer Sharp mention where he obtained that information about going to Pittsburgh?
Objection, hearsay.
Well, I'm just asking if,
Where he obtained it from would be based on hearsay.
Sustained.
did he come out of the blue, did it?
I have no idea.
Right. But you heard it, and you heard it from a fellow law enforcement officer.
In a certain context, yes.
Right. And certainly, it would be something that you would be interested in during the course of your investigation of Leon Jacobs, correct?
I was interested in that comment because it relayed to me that Ms. Veracos was going to be safe because she was leaving due to the threat that was being made.
Right. And, of course, you documented that in your offense report.
That was prior to any offense report that was made, and no, that's a conversation that Officer Sharp and I had.
All right. Were tickets purchased?
All that I'm aware of is that she left town. I don't know who purchased the tickets, who did any of that.
They were purchased.
I know she left town.
Okay. Do you know who made flight arrangements? If you know.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Have you been subpoenaed to come down today?
Yes.
Were actually served a subpoena?
I received it via email.
I'm sorry?
I received it via email.
Okay. And how did you acknowledge that receipt?
I'm not actually sure that I did acknowledge it because I knew I was going to be present and just frankly didn't.
So you weren't personally served?
I had not been personally served.
And you're doing this as a cooperative witness for the state of Texas, correct?
I'm doing this as a witness for the state of Texas and because I had been subpoenaed by you.
Right. And if, in fact, we had been subpoenaed you via email or in any other way other than personal service, is it fair to say you would not feel obligated to come down and testify on behalf of the defense based on the failure to have you personally served?
Well, I would have been here either way because I was part of this investigation. So.
Okay. So you're telling this jury you would have showed up for the defense Have we subpoenaed you?
If
Or
you
have
subpoenaed
we
me, I would have.
emailed you the subpoena.
I was made aware that you had inquired as to whether I was going to be here or not, apart from the subpoena, and so I was going to be here either way. Whether you subpoenaed me or as a witness for the state, I'm part of this investigation, I would be present at the trial.
And it would be logical, would it not, for me to assume that you were going to be present in as much as you had previously testified in the bond hearing in this case?
I would expect to be questioned in regards to this matter.
Anything else? We have nothing further to cover. Thank you, sir.
Do you know if law enforcement requested Megan Veracruz to leave town?
Yes.
And do you know if law enforcement requested, or if Megan Veracruz went to Pittsburgh at the request of law enforcement?
Yes.
So she went to Pittsburgh after she became aware of the threat to her safety?
That is correct.
Judge, I've checked. I'd like to take him on board, if I may.
You may.
Officer, I thought you testified when I asked you some questions about why she went to Pittsburgh. You didn't partake in that decision.
I did not purchase her a ticket or ask her to leave. I got beat to the punch, actually, by the HPD homicide.
Okay. So, based on your testimony to this jury, all that's based on what you have concluded, not interaction with Megan at all, but what you've concluded as the reason why she went to Pittsburgh.
The information that I'm aware of is based on a conversation with Officer Sharp.
Responsive to my question. I'm asking him.
Restate it, please.
Yes. The information that you've received, strike that. You have no personal knowledge yourself of why she went to Pittsburgh. It's based on what you've heard, correct?
Correct.
All right. I don't have anything further. Thank you, Officer.
When Mr. Parnham asked you if Officer Sharp had ever talked about Pittsburgh with you, and you said yes, was it because Officer Sharp told you that Megan had been requested by HPD
Your
to
Honor,
go to Pittsburgh?
asking for incorporated and requested a conclusion, and also testimony from the prosecutors in the form of a question in front of this jury.
Judge
Also
Adams.
asking hearsay, I believe.
Well, Judge, it's in response to the defense questioning him on what Officer Sharp told him about Pittsburgh. He has a right to tell the jury what Officer Sharp said about Pittsburgh. He's left the misimpression with the jury that they had a discussion about Pittsburgh prior to the threat on Megan, and that's not true.
You know,
You already
I've
testified
not-
to such.
You know,
I sustain his objection.
No, nothing further from this witness, Judge.
and Your Honor, I'm going to object to the prosecutor's inference that I've tried to misstate anything in front of this jury.
I don't think she intended that, and if she did,
Sir.
I'm sure that wasn't her intent. And I will to state also on the record that I'm sure that's not your intent.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Nothing further, Judge.
Your excuse subject to recall.